everybody. Welcome to another episode of Miss Meyer's National Egg Holiday Celebration. Today, the national holiday is National Cherish an Antique Day. So let me say that again because you don't hear this too often. It is Cherish an Antique Day. So today I'm going to show you some antiques that me and my family found on our farm and just kind of explain the history of some of them and then give you a couple challenges at the end. So the first one is a corn husking hook. Now, this would be a product that they used to husk corns with. So I actually have one that we found on our farm. I'm wearing it right now, so I'm going to get a little bit closer here. It is attached on with, it's all made out of leather with a metal piece, and this is the hook on the side. So this is a husking hook. What happens with this is you use this metal peg, they call it, and as you're next to a corn stalk, okay, you stab the husk with that little peg right there, move the action backwards, and that separates the husk from the corn. Then with your other hand, you're able to grab the ear of corn, snap it off, detach it, and then throw it into the wagon that's next to you. Then once the wagon's full, take it to the unload it, do all that stuff, but just walk down the aisle and husk your corn. It sounds like a pretty tedious task. Not too many people do it nowadays. However, there are some national and statewide competitions of corn husking. I'm going to try to throw a link out there to a cool video I found from the Illinois state competition. But literally the competition is have your husker on, go down with a wagon and see how many ears of corn or how much you can get husked within a certain time period. So it's pretty cool to watch. You can tell people that are totally inexperienced like me compared to the experts or people that have used to do it a lot when they were kids. It's just one fluid motion, and I'm not ready to try this yet or go through my fields and husk all the corn by hand. The other really cool thing I learned about this is I would like to think that this, was bought by grandparents or by my great-grandparents, and they used it in the field. I'm hoping that at least someone used them. And the cool part about this is they actually made ones for right-handers and left-handers. So I am left-handed. My grandpa was actually also left-handed, and I'm wearing a left-handed one. So I like to think this used to be his. I'm not sure on that. Can't really find out that history. But that is kind of how that works. So fun fact, they did take left-handers into consideration for this. Next thing we're going to talk about in some history that I found as I'm taking off this corn husker is some feed sacks that we found around. So my family farm is corn and soybeans, but when we get our corn now and different seeds and even feeds to feed our animals, they either come in big, huge plastic totes. It just gets dumped directly in. There's so many new methods. A lot of them used to just be feed sacks made of cloth. So the first one here that we found is this one right here, and it is from Sinclair's out of Cedar Rapids. So what we did is I'm going to show you probably about 5 of them here and tell you a little bit about the history because it was really fun to find the history of these things. So Sinclair's is based out of Cedar Rapids. They had a really cool website because the Sinclair family was actually really big in Cedar Rapids. They eventually built this huge mansion in the 1880s on 10 acres of land. It was 3 stories. It actually had 21 rooms. Like, that's huge. It's now called the Bruce Moore in Cedar Rapids, so you can actually go and tour it, see all of these things. But this Sinclair family is the one that built the property. Back to the feed sack, okay? T.M. Sinclair, which it says that right on the feed sack, was a man and his family over in Europe and then in New York got into really big to meat processing. He ended up moving out to Iowa, settling in Cedar Rapids, and expanding the meat packaging operation very, very heavily. He ended up being the largest meat processing plant in Iowa and the 4th largest in the nation. So that's a huge feat. They ended up mainly focuses on pigs. They ended up harvesting over 1,000 pigs a day. So when you're thinking about like the 1880s, that's a lot of pigs. T.M. Sinclair chose Cedar Rapids for a specific reason to expand his business. For anyone that knows Cedar Rapids would know that they have a lot of train tracks that run through. So the train operation greatly helped him be able to bring pigs in, ship out their products, and really keep that going. The other thing he got invested in that I figured out was actually, let me make sure I say it right, harvesting river ice. So sounds really weird. So Cedar River runs right through Cedar Rapids. When it froze in the winter, they actually ended up harvesting chunks of ice and then using that as an ice refrigerator to keep their meat cold. So that was the main way that he could operate his business all the way throughout the year. Really interesting concept. Not a lot of people do that anymore. So that was really cool. Guessing, again, because he did meat processing, that whatever came in this bag was some sort of byproduct that then can ship back to other people. So that's what we're guessing at. Later on with this whole company, it doesn't exist now. It remained operational until about 1990, got taken over by a bunch of other people. And then in 2008, actually the whole entire plant, or what used to be that plant, had to be demolished after the flood of 2008 in Cedar Rapids. So that is a little history about Sinclair's. Next feed sack I have for you is much heavier duty. It is Pattinson Seeds out of Durand, Wisconsin. This one was a lot harder to find some information on. I had to do a lot of research and I still couldn't figure out much. But pretty sure this bag contained seed of some sort. I mean, it says seed right on it. The only history I could find was that Durand, which is where it says this town is from, in the seed. The site of Durand was established by settlers in about the 1850s, and Henry Pattison was one of the first 4 settlers. So my thoughts, and I'm maybe assuming a little more into this, but that this Pattison family was one of the founding establishments of Durand and created the seed business. This next one is Curry seed. Dependable hybrid seed core out of Elkport, South Dakota. So Curry's is actually still a seed business. In 2008, they got kind of sought by Pioneer, DuPont Pioneer. Now they're a retail division, but it still exists. So this is a really cool thing of something that is historical. I mean, I have this antique seed bag, but it's still a company that's taking place right now. J.J. Curry, which is the name right at the bottom, J.J. Curry and Sons, was a 26-year-old farmer in 1918. So that was quite a long time ago. During that time, he actually attended the great Iowa State University. So kudos to Iowa State. J.J. Curry made the right decision. He went there, brought new ideas back to his family farm in South Dakota, and just tried to figure out new ways to expand their business, be more productive, get better yields, etc. Then, a couple years later, 1934, he attended what was called a winter course. So, winter courses at Iowa State used to be made specifically for farmers because they weren't able to come in the fall. They weren't able to come in the spring because they had a lot of farm work to do. So they created these winter courses. So we went to Iowa State, took one, and he learned about the new modern hybrid seeds. So hybridization was a new concept, hadn't really been done before. Iowa State was doing a lot of research. He was fascinated by it, came back to his family farm, and wanted to test the seeds out himself. He sold it to some neighbors, and they saw their yields boom. It went up crazy, and they're like, this is the right decision. We got to keep doing it. So that's how his company took off. He started Curry Seeds. They were dependable hybrid seeds, and that's how his business started. So there's that history. The next one we have is a little unique looking one. It's got some color on it. This is Washburn Crosby Company out of Minneapolis. This one's a little bit bigger too. It is actually was a flour mill, so we're assuming that there was just flour within this sack. But we also think that might have been some sort of animal product because there's actually a cow image on there. So unsure a little bit. Got to do a little more research on that one. But interesting about this Washburn Crosby history. Okay, it was a flour mill up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. In the late 1800s, it started rapidly growing, like crazy. They kept building more, expanding more, producing more, okay? Fun fact, or maybe not so fun of a fact that I found in their history, is because of this huge booming industry, their company was going great, they decided to build a bigger new mill. Okay, so they called this the A mill. This was going to be the new central spot, getting everything done. Like a lot of stuff would be done there. They built it. It was going great, producing a lot. 4 years later, there was an accident. Well, kind of an accident. There ended up being a flour dust explosion. So flour dust got trapped, built up. This actually was an issue that happened in a lot of different elevators and places, especially when the ventilation and other practices hadn't been made yet. But there was a huge flour dust explosion. It ended up wiping out 5 other mills, including that one, okay, and several city blocks. Afterwards, this Washburn guy decided, okay, we learned our lesson. Let's integrate some new practices, some new ways to make sure that this doesn't happen again. They built a new one, and it kept booming after that. Washburn ended up, again, switching hands a couple of times to different people, and the Washburn Crosby Company, along with a couple other companies, including Pillsbury Mill, are now what altogether creates General Mills. So that is where that history went. This last one that I have for you is not a feed sack. It's a little bit different. It is a bucket right here, and it says Dr. Salisbury's Avitone from Charles City, Iowa, so a little bit closer to home for Osage. Dr. Salisbury, a little bit about him, was born in England, actually. At the age of 21, he decided to come to America, came all by himself, not with his family, and he ended up being an apprentice for a veterinary in Charles City. So that's how he kind of started the area. He then moved away, got married, and then in 1924, he got the opportunity to buy that practice. So he came back to Charles City as a vet and started what turned out to be a huge business. He created Dr. Salisbury's Laboratories and developed many, many different products, particularly for chickens. Now, he was one that was always known for never being afraid to take the next step. So it makes sense that how fast his business grew. Okay, so he started off developing some chicken products like dewormers, some vaccines, developed into poultry health magazines that he produced, created poultry short courses for producers where they had literally thousands of producers and different people come in to learn about all these things and test some different situations out. He built a research farm to test his products. He grew more, not just from chickens, but into also poultry and swine and tested things out for them. And he just developed so many different products and pharmaceuticals that were sold. So this was one of their major ones, Avitone, that was, again, just sold in this bucket here. The laboratories do not exist anymore, but the main office of where this headquarters were and the main production lab in Charles City is actually what is now the Floyd County Museum. So if you ever go to that museum, that is actually where his lab is, and you can see a whole entire room set up honoring Dr. Salisbury and his work that he did. This information was a little bit harder to find online, but I want to thank Patty Heddens for helping me gather this information. She's done some reports on this, and she actually was Dr. Salisbury's secretary for a while. So that was the cool information there. So that is my history, my treasuring these antiques day. Here's 2 challenges that I want to give you. The first one is ask your parents, grandparents, family, cousins, whoever, about antiques that they have. That maybe your family owns, maybe you've never seen them before, or maybe you've seen them and you still have no idea what they were for. Listen to those stories, do some research to figure out the history behind things. Me and my family did that history and the research and listened to stories about these products that I explained to you today. And we had a lot of fun and just good conversations, just, I don't know, talking about it and seeing what my dad did differently when he was growing up compared to how my life is now. Just some unique things like that. The second challenge I have for you today is then, whether it be those antiques that you learn about there or some other ones, maybe just take a picture too, just to remember them. So what I did is we also walked around my farm and found some other types of antiques. Some are farm related, some are not. And I have a picture of all of them. I have not told you what they are yet, so go ahead and take a look at those. See if you can identify any of those antiques. So just add into the comments. I'll put some numbers on there. You'll be able to do it. See if you can figure out those antiques. So again, that's what I have for today, guys. Happy National Treasure Your Antique Day.